Damn. Nobody like this shit.
Oh my God. Oh
no.
Dr. Dre, how you get a WAP? Keeping it wet. How do you? I want to. That's what I just want to know, Dr. Dre. Listen, I'm asking questions that people need to be asking.
Because what I tell all my patients, and what I really tell everybody, mask up. Everybody needs to mask up, regardless of what the CDC says, what the WHO says. We all need to mask up. If we take a look at what we see in China, Singapore, and all these other countries, the bare minimum we can do is mask up.
Yes, Don. Actually, we are seeing an increase in the use of substances in patients who have never had problems with substance use or abuse or dependency.
We love you guys. We want you to stay safe. And, you know, I know me and Don get together and Lord knows what's going to happen. We kept it pretty classy today.
And if you don't teach your kid about race and racism, the world will.
You know, there's no way that this, teenager got mandatory life for drugs, first offense. And a lot of people don't know there's no parole in the federal system. So when we hear life, we understand as federal lawyers that means life without parole automatically.
That's right. That's right. Black Lives Matter.
Any ideas to how to fix the relationship between our communities and the police?
Yeah, stop being a pawn in letting people make you choose sides. And why I say that is, there are people that make money off of division, black and white. There are people whose whole life is division and, hate these people. I'm telling you, no, hate these people. No, hate these people, but support me. And there are people that's their life, like white or black. And I don't play that game. Like, no, I'm not going to say every police officer is the devil or evil. That's just ridiculous.
Every time we get a little closer, every time we crash another ceiling, every time we see another representation of us where there has never been representation of us before, that's where the joy comes from. So I see a lot of non BIPOC people, so Black, Indigenous, people of color, comment, why not all women? Why not all girls? Because not all girls have had an opportunity to see themselves in the highest position of powers in this nation.
Dr. Dawn is a world-renowned pediatric and adult psychiatrist. She has her own practice in Houston, and as you will soon find out, she is full of solutions and helps you deal with the problems. So she's a winner.
All right, like and subscribe. Thanks, guys.
Hello, good evening everyone, and welcome to another season, or actually live with Dr. Dawn. I'm your host, Dr. Dawn Camila Brown, double board certified child, adolescent, adult, and sports psychiatrist, two-time best-selling author, producer, podcaster, media influencer. I'm the sole practitioner of ADHD Wellness Center in Houston, Texas, where I specialize in ADHD evaluation, assessment, testing, treatment, as well as ADHD coaching. And I'm also the founder and CEO of 𝕃𝕀𝕍𝔼, where I am actually the physician and also psychiatrist for elite athletes across many professional organizations. So thank you so much for joining me for another Live with Dr. Dawn. This is my baby here, and I love to bring to you just pioneers within people who are doing the dang on thing within their communities and their roles. And this month, March Manness, is where I'm featuring poignant men in our community. And I've introduced you to some this month. or Mask Month actually, influential men in our community. And listen, I know it's April 3rd, but I could not end this, I guess, this phase or this actual series, if you will, without introducing my next guest. I have been following Reverend Dr. Starsky Wilson for many years beyond our years of being students at Xavier University of Louisiana. And he has just done so many things for St. Louis communities, national communities. And so you'll hear a little bit about that when I actually introduce him and when we have our conversation. But you know what to do. Before I'm going to ask you, please go ahead and share this with everyone you know. Share this live. Let them know that we are here. Let them know to come into the space so they can actually partake in our conversation live. All right. All right. So let me go ahead and get to our guest. He is another friend of mine. Dr. Reverend Starsky Wilson is the president and CEO of the Children's Defense Fund and the CDF for Children's Defense Fund Action Council, which envisions a nation where marginalized children flourish, leaders prioritize their well-being, and communities wield the power to ensure that children thrive. Starsky is also a board chair for the National Committee for Responsive Philanthropy and the Forum for Theological Exploration. From the years 2011 through 2020, Reverend Wilson was president and CEO of Deaconess Foundation, a faith-based philanthropy for children, well-being, and racial justice in St. Louis. From 2008 to 18, Dr. Wilson pastored St. John's Church, the Beloved Community, a multiracial congregation in St. Louis. Under his leadership, the foundation constructed and established the Deaconess Center for Child Wellbeing, which is a community action tank engaging thousands of citizens annually. After the police killing of Michael Brown Jr., the church hosted the Black Lives Matter Freedom Ride and other mobilizations. Wilson was appointed co-chair of the Ferguson Commission, which released the Forward Through Ferguson, a path toward racial equity report, calling for sweeping changes in policing, the courts, child well-being, and economic mobility in 2015. He currently serves boards for Duke Divinity School, the Samuel DeWitt Proctor Conference, and the Robert Wood Johnson Foundation. Dr. Wilson earned his bachelor's degree in political science from our alma mater, Xavier University of Louisiana, and his master's of divinity from Eden Theological Seminary, and the doctor of ministry from Duke University. He is a proud member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated and Sigma Pi Phi Fraternity. Starsky is married to one of my sorors, Dr. Latoya Smith Wilson, a dentist and child advocate. They are raising 4 beautiful children. Listen, you all, don't miss out. Go ahead and please share this live to people you know and let them know we're in this space. And I want to see you in this space as well. Let me know that you're here as I introduce the guest of the evening, the Reverend Dr. Starsky Wilson.
Hey.
Hey.
How you doing, Don?
I am well. I mean, after all I read about you, you have been one busy person, but one person who has made a difference.
Thank you, sis. It's a lot to do. Grateful to be with you. Glad to be with you again and on this platform. Congratulations on all your success, and a joy in seeing you do it, joy in seeing the grace with which you do it, the ways you're living out, servant leadership and modeling it for so many of us. So blessings. Thanks.
Blessings. Thank you. Thank you, Starsky. I really appreciate that. As always, I like to start from the beginning. I understand that you're from Dallas, Texas. Is that correct?
Indeed. Once a Texan, always a Texan. I am from Dallas. For those who know the area, Oak Cliff, that's my hood. Grew up in the city of Dallas. I always try to make try to be specific about that. A lot of people I know who are in other spaces are from the wider metropolitan area. I'm from the city proper, the southwest side of Dallas, in a place called Oak Cliff, always have in my heart. So yes, that I'm guilty as charged.
Well, listen, I love being a Texan. I'm in Houston, been here for about 14, 15 years, and I guess I'm considered a Houstonian now. But that's definitely, but I definitely understand the Southern hospitality in a different way. And so, this is my home, and I definitely understand, kind of the community that you were raised in. I see it here as part of my second family in Houston. I forgot to ask you though, Starsky, how are you feeling? How have you been feeling lately? How things going with you?
I'm feeling okay. There are ups and downs. This pandemic has been interesting. It has been for me, early 2020 was in some ways refreshing, a lightening of the load, challenging because of the ways in which we needed to minister to the loss in our own community. And especially in St. Louis. I mean, St. Louis is where I was when the pandemic started. And for a full 6 weeks, no one died of COVID-19 but Black people. And so, that pulled us down, but also, that mixed reality of that early year was we were spending more time with family. We were grounded in place. And that came with some value to be with the people that we loved, but of course in a difficult situation. What I'm more excited about now is that, for a full year of the pandemic, I was making the transition to live here in DC and doing so mostly by myself. My family didn't move here. I moved here in December 2020. My family didn't move here till December 2021. So it was a little back and forth, missing my folks. I'm just glad to have everybody back under one roof, to be able to love on my kids and my wife every single day. So now I don't want to leave the house again. They're here, so I don't want to leave the house again.
No, that's right.
It's all good. I appreciate you asking, Don.
Yes. How is the family? How are the children? How's Dr. LaToya doing?
Everyone's doing well. The kids
good.
are adjusting well. This is like birthday season for our boys. We have 3 boys and 1 baby girl. So boys are having birthdays right now, getting older and advancing. Our oldest is 17, turned 17 this week.
Wow.
And LaToya, you know her. She's always, advancing. And so she's rounding out a Master of Public Health now. So she's finished her dentistry degree. She's been, practicing for about 12 years now. And she's now finishing her capstone. In the context of this transition, while she's getting all her board certifications transferred, she's finishing a Master of Public Health and being more thoughtful about ways in which population level health is a part of her ministry and cause. So it's a joy. God has blessed us.
Amen. Amen. Yes. And I'm praying for you and your family, and tell the kids happy birthday from a Aries,
Will do.
Aries Nation over here. Yes. So I would like for you to just do something fun here. Can you describe your personality as a child?
Wow. My personality, the first thing I do is I had this image of myself. There's this picture of me, and I had a jersey, a Dallas Cowboy jersey on, and I had a helmet from the Houston Astros covering up this big old fro. So the first thing before I get to personality, I had to go back there. As a child, I guess I was, I really experienced, I was a joyous kid. I was a happy kid. I was a little timid by the time I got to middle school. I wasn't big, I was kind of undersized in middle school. Mm-hmm. So not exactly shy, but timid. I wasn't outgoing kind of thing. But as a very little child, I really experienced and felt the safety of my home. So I kind of had the joy and happiness in that. And wasn't too precocious. I kind of learned the rules and followed them. I was a church kid always. My mama was the one who was over Vacation Bible School and training union. And, I just tell people I was a youth pastor early in my ministry. I said, we were youth pastors, but we didn't have youth pastors. You know what I'm saying? It was somebody's mama, somebody's mama, kids, and they traded off somebody else's mama. That was my mama. She's the one who had the other youth group most of the time. So we enjoyed ourselves, learned a lot of church. I was an usher. I was in the youth choir. I was a youth meeting on Saturday morning, youth department meetings. We call it youth department meetings. Learning Robert's Rules of Order, because we couldn't do anything without Robert's Rules of Order at Union Missionary Baptist Church. So it was a joyous time. Not without its challenges, as a little child, but I enjoyed myself, and people that take care of me. So it was good.
There's so many similarities between you and I. My mom was a minister of music. She actually was a minister of music at age 12 at her church. When she was,
Wow.
yes, 12 years
Age
old.
12.
That's
Wait.
12.
This sounds real cogent. What tradition was
Where was
it?
it? Southern Baptist, Birmingham,
Really?
Alabama. Yes, 12
Wow.
years old. She was a minister of music. And so that eventually evolved into being the minister of music for 3 churches
Wow.
at 2 at once, and 8 choirs, 6 at one church, 2 at another, 3 at another. I
Oh
mean,
my.
yes. And then my dad, grew up in the church as well, and everybody in the family sang. And
See, I
I
didn't
sang
know
the
this.
choir,
How
my
did I not
brother.
know this?
I know, that's what I'm saying. I get goosebumps when I'm reading about you, because every guest that I have, especially if it's a friend of mine, of course I don't, believe everything on media, but there are certain things I'm read about and want to ask you, and I'm like, wow, I had no idea. And so I asked you this because there was a speech that you delivered, I think it was last year, and it was actually, the title was the ghost and growing edges of Black faith. Do you remember
Yeah.
that speech? It
Yes.
was at the Festivals of Faith.
Yeah. Festivals of
And
Faith in Louisville, Kentucky.
yes, yes. And you so eloquently described how it's important for children to be children. And you learned how to be a child by the rearing, of being at a church and serving in choir and usher and all these things, and eventually youth pastor and minister and pastor of a church. And now your role as the CEO and president of the Children's Defense Fund. I mean, I think that just having that grounding at such a young stage, and how you described how, being on the debate team or speaking at Easter speeches prepares you for speaking, right? Or the debate team, and how that prospered into your pastoring. And how learning right from wrong, the moral. I mean, can you talk a little bit about that? I thought it was a wonderful speech you gave.
Yeah. No, thank you for that. No, it was I have a kind of a high theology of sanctuary. Like I believe that young people need safe space that is free. It's not totally free, right? We know church got issues, right? We know this, right? We know these spaces have issues and challenges, but young people having a set aside space to develop and be themselves is what I experience and what I believe young people need. And so for me, this idea of an ecclesiology, a theology of sanctuary, what does it mean for people to be able to be their full and whole selves within the walls of the church and behind that stained glass so that they might develop? What does it mean for people not to have to hide or to shade any element of their being, but rather to be able to be cared for at the highest level? Really shaped a lot of my orientation around ministry and specifically a youth ministry. And one of the things I shared in that talk was, frankly, I feel like I've come full circle. That I'm a pastor no matter what I do and no matter where I am. When I worked in philanthropy, I was a pastor. When I work in the social sector, I'm a pastor. If I'm fundraising, I'm trying to be thoughtful about a theology of revenue generation and resource generation. And so in the same way, at the Children's Defense Fund, I just feel like I'm a youth pastor again. I just got 74 million children in my youth group. And so we scale to now try to be able to carve out safe space for the development of children and youth to be their whole selves, whether that means safety from family members and challenges in the context of the child welfare system, what that means trying to prevent abuse and neglect, or whether it means that their school should be able to be whole, open, affirming, shaping spaces for them, or it means they actually need playgrounds so they can run and experience joy, jump. I tell people all the time, you know the sign of a happy child? They sing and dance.
Man.
Don't tell me when the children are singing and dancing. I don't know about all the reports. There are people who know the data better than me. But when children sing and dance, I know they are well.
Yes.
And that's what we should be trying to create the space for.
I love that. I love that. We're going to come back to that. I want to connect some, what you just said to something, to your journey later on. But I do want to talk about SU. I couldn't leave that out. So How did you come to learn about 𝐉𝐨 University of Louisiana?
Yeah, I had a very good friend when I was in high school named 𝕨𝕚𝕥𝕙 III. Wayman was my guy. He was a year older than me. He went to Law Magna just like I did, and we were connected. We were boys, undergrad. We were in the same kind of high school service group. We called it a fraternity, but leadership development group is what it really was. And he went to Xavier the year before me. I was looking at other schools. I was very clear since I was like a sophomore. I knew I was going to University of Texas at Austin. I had, scored well enough on my pre-SAT. I had been to UT about 4 or 5 times by the time I graduated.
Wow.
I've been on every trip to UT there could be. I knew where the black students hung out and played spades. I knew everything about University of Texas at Austin. Having gone for different reasons. I went to Xavier one time. My boy went the year before. And I decided I was going. I was hooked. Yeah. There's something about that Black college experience and something about the family that was displayed there that made it the place for me. And I wasn't a traditional major fit for Xavier. I was a political science major. I became a theology minor. These are not the things you go to Xavier for. You go to if you're smart, like Dr. Dawn, you go to Xavier pre-med. You go to Xavier to study, to engage in the medical and biomedical sciences. But it was a place for me. I went, I got hooked, enjoyed it. And that's where, my life transformed. I met my wife at Xavier. I found my voice at Xavier. I discerned my call during those years. I didn't want my call during those years, but I discerned my call during those years. It was the right place for me. And now it's, it's a joy and the heart of a lot of what our family is. My wife went there. We met there. Her parents met at Xavier years before. So it's Xavier.
I had no idea. No idea. Okay. Yeah, my parents met at Dillard.
Oh,
yes.
Wait. How did they let you? How did they let you end up in the third ward? I mean, how did listen? You know what? They
weren't actually at all. They wanted me to go to it. They actually encouraged me to have the HBCU experience because they did, right? And so they didn't care where, but my mom was very focused on me going to Xavier just because I wanted to be a doctor. Yeah. And she was like, there's no other option. You're going to Xavier. Not only me, my brother went to Xavier as well. He's a forensic psychiatrist in California. Yes. So he actually went to Xavier too. And he didn't want to go either, but he loved it. He met his wife at Xavier.
See? Look, there's something about, hey, just for the record, for anybody out there, I'm going to bless your life. PSA. There's something about those Xavier girls. I'm just saying.
I'm going to ask you, is that why you went there? I'm
trying to bless somebody here. So I'm just write it down. I'm trying to teach my son. I got a 17-year-old. Similarly, he has his heart set on Howard. And so we encourage that. We believe in HBCUs as a training ground. And again, sacred space, right? When we start talking about the development of adulthood, to do so among one's people who are very different, right? I learned about remarkable differences in Black people at Xavier. Right? These are some people are not. I didn't know Black people were like some of the Black people I met at Xavier. I didn't know. Look, I didn't come from a whole lot. When I saw somebody roll through there was this guy. I won't say no name.
I know you're talking about too.
Dude rolled up on the yard on a regular basis in a long big body Benz. Big body Benz. Then he had a car wreck, and he came back in a long Cadillac. I'm like, wait a minute, my mama drives a Cadillac. He's 19. His replacement drives a Cadillac. I didn't know Black people like that existed until I went to Xavier. So remarkable diversity of Black humanity committed to Black excellence. I mean, I think this is the joy of HBCUs. I know we can come do HBCU commercials, but that's where my heart is.
Amen. And you were actually SGA president while you were at Xavier, right?
No, I wasn't SGA president. I was a class president. I was class president.
That's right.
Xavier, but I was not SGA president.
That's right. Class president.
No. Look, this is what happened. So I'll tell you about them Xavier girls again. I ran for HC.
Okay.
And there was this powerful, brilliant Black woman who just happened to be a Delta named Christy Clinton.
Yes, I forgot. That's right.
She cleaned my clock in the election, and she served student body well.
Yes,
and she's still doing so brilliantly in the medical profession. So
yes, she is. Yes, she is. Shout out to Christy. That's right. My apologies, but I think that's how we met, because I was trying to think of what was my first interaction with you, because I knew we were very involved with SGA, in different capacities. That's right. Yeah. What was your favorite moment? Do you have a favorite moment from Xavier, or a funny moment from Xavier that you like to share?
Favorite moment from Xavier, of course, is meeting my wife. That's a whole other kind of story. But I think favorite, like I'm talking about, like feeling, like my favorite feeling at Xavier that I kind of connect with still was the experience of being at SpringFest '95.
Okay, talk about it.
SpringFest '95 was my first SpringFest at Xavier. And when I talk about like the joy, like looking around, I still have, the theme for SpringFest '95 was Black Out the Nonsense. And the t-shirt, I still got it. I work out in it sometimes. I still got the t-shirt, '95. Black t-shirt, it said Black Out the Nonsense real big. On the back, it had remarkable, beautiful art from Terrence Osborne.
Wow.
One of the most remarkable artists in New Orleans and on the Gulf Coast. And he was there at Xavier at the time, and he produced this. And, I can't remember who was at the concert. I can't remember, all the stuff. I kind of worked on it. Like, that was my thing. I worked on like SpringFest, Oktoberfest, Homecoming. Those are the things that I did. And I started out doing that my very freshman year. And I worked on SpringFest as like an administrative assistant to the chair or something. I was like, look, I want to work hard. I want to get a backstage pass. That's what I want to do.
I know that's right.
And that's what I did. Like a runner. But to be in the midst of this joyous experience, to have all of this, like, we were having fun, and we were kind of being grown, but not all the way grown. And, with the support of folks in student affairs helping us to make things happen. But that was it. Like, the campus during SpringFest, my very first time, was just the best experience. Being free and Black and educated and, young, gifted, and Black.
I know that's right. I still tell kids I see this today who talk about rep artists and different ones. I'm like, I was standing next to them. They all often came to our campus and, party with us, did the Jubilee with us. I mean, everything, it was just an awesome experience, an awesome time. Yeah. We were at the right time. We did. Yes. So where did life lead you following your graduation? You said you received your calling, and you actually honed it, or I forgot what word you used. Discerned it, I guess.
Yeah, I discerned my call when I was at Xavier, and frankly, it was pretty early on. But it's just not, I don't know the thing to be when you're, 19, a college campus at University in New Orleans. Like, I didn't know that, being a preacher, it wasn't exactly the thing you wanted to be. Like, there was a lot you wanted to experience. But I was clear that was what the call was. And so for me, a lot of it was negotiation. So I added, I had political science as a major, I added theology as a minor, began to try to prepare, but then see what are the other things that I could do. So Xavier had a program, certification in nonprofit management through a partnership called American 𝕉𝐻𝐈𝐵𝐽𝑒𝑐S. It was a collective of national nonprofit organizations and networks and universities that work together to kind of establish a pipeline of people coming out into health and human services. And so I thought, frankly, this is a way I can negotiate not going fully into like church ministry. I had two uncles who were pastors. I was like, I don't want that.
Wow.
But I can help people use these same skills, use some of the same perspectives, but I don't have to go all the way in it. Tell God your plan, God laughs. But what happened was I was able to come out. I worked for the United Way of Greater New Orleans immediately after graduation, raising money for different nonprofits in the region. They interestingly sent me back to Xavier. Xavier was one of my accounts that I ended up working with to help, raise money for kind of the network of health and human services throughout the area. And then I came to St. Louis for a capstone institute for American Humanics in January of 2000. I came to St. Louis for a 5-day institute and stayed 20 years.
Wow. That's how it happens.
That's how it happens. I met the president of the United Way there. She was looking for, I met the president, I met the senior vice president for resource development. They had a job opening. And within about 8 weeks, I moved to St. Louis.
8 weeks.
United Way. And that really began my trajectory in nonprofit management. But what happened was, because God doesn't let go, right?
No, he doesn't.
What happened was, I said, I wanted to do this. God said, I want you to do this. So I ended up doing both. So what it's like, I just worked hard. So most of my career, I have worked in the nonprofit setting. So when I worked for United Way, when I worked for the Urban League, I was also the youth pastor for Greater Mount Carmel Baptist Church. Then I went back to seminary full time. And while I was doing that, I was doing nonprofit consulting. And then I ended up pastoring a church. And while I was pastoring the church, that introduced me to another nonprofit ministry related to the church, Indigenous Foundation. So I ended up doing philanthropy while I was pastoring the church. So it was all this like, okay, you want to do what you want to do? I'll let you do what you want to do. I think Scripture says, I'll give you the desires of your heart.
Amen.
But
Amen.
do what I've called you to do.
Amen.
So most of my life has been vocational.
That's it. Wow. Wow, Starsky. And God prepares you, doesn't he? And he makes you space for your gifts, your talents, and your desires at the same time. Yes, he does. He does.
When they say you give room for you, it's real talk.
Isn't that real?
It's real talk.
I mean, it really is. You're exactly right. And thank God that you actually answered your calling. Because I understand as a youth pastor, you've actually done a lot for St. Louis communities. There were some interviews that I watched of you of how you, basically had a very intimate relationship with the youth that you've, began to know that's a part of the church, but also extended to the community.
Yeah.
Right. And even youth who were, my field is mental health, who struggled with mental health, struggled with trying to, be a part of a community that wasn't supportive of them. Yeah. And again, it goes back to the church and how they found that support, the love, the nurturing. I mean, everything that we can need as to become empowered children and be children, right?
Yeah.
And I just appreciate reading about you and, kind of the directives of how you just organize certain community organizations and programs to allow the youth to be youth. So thank you for that. Thank you for that. That really touched me.
No, I appreciate that. I appreciate that. And it's, it's transformative for me. There is nothing that has changed me more, informed me more than a deep relationship with people younger than me. And now I have to say younger than me because, some of them aren't youth in the traditional sense. I mean,
right.
I got people celebrating 30 years old who I met, 10 years ago and thought I was helping them out in college and this, that, the other. And now they like, hey, I'm getting married or having children.
Wow.
So like this, I talk to people about this generation that comes after me immediately as millennials, right? I talk about my millennial mentors. Like there's a whole crew of folks who have taught me things. And I try to be really intentional about, what my role is, which in many ways is to help to resource, to create space for them. Their flourishing, their discernment about kind of what's next, what are the next steps and phases in life. But then also to listen deeply because there's some stuff that I inherited and there's some stuff that I was trained for that is not, to speak biblical language, meat for the moment. There's some stuff that I've had to work to unlearn about respectability and code switching and formation and going along and getting along that I'm 45 years old. That was probably right from the people who taught me for success, but not right from the generation that follows behind me. And so they helped me to unlearn that. So it really is a mutual mentorship that I enjoy with a number of young people who have helped to shape me. And now they're opening doors for me.
Wow. Full circle, as you said.
Full circle indeed.
Full circle. Amen to that. Wow. I'm just processing. I want to switch to kind of during a time in St. Louis, and I know that community violence, there's personal stories and relationship that you have with community violence, and Mike Brown Jr.'s shooting. Can you talk a little bit about that? And I mean, again, how we're connected, right, to certain things, and how we've had personal relationship with certain things. These things are not happenstance. I think that, the part of these things is just to prepare us, right? And so can you share a little bit about your experience with community violence?
Yeah, I mean, it is, when I was in St. Louis, serving both Deaconess and St. John's, Michael Brown Jr. was killed by Officer Darren Walker, by a police officer in Ferguson, Missouri. And the early images of that were of, Michael Brown lying on the ground in the middle of the street. He lay there for more than 4 hours. And so people captured imagery and began to share it out. And it was a Saturday, and I was at church. And so I saw one of those images, and it called me forth in a way because I lost my older brother. My brother was murdered, as was my youngest uncle, but I sat through portions of the trial for the two men who murdered my older brother. And as to say, he was wrong place, wrong time, community beef between two guys. And he was visiting a friend of his from elementary school at the friend's grandmother's house. These two guys came and they took the lives of my brother, the person they were looking for, his brother, and their grandmother. And I remember from sitting through the trial, the image of my brother lying in the home where he was killed in a pool of his own life force. And when I saw the images of Michael Brown, it immediately took me back to that place. So one of the things I understood, or I had a sensitivity to, was the young people who gathered around Mike and gathered in the streets, I mean, literally around him, and stayed in the streets for days after, mourning and grieving about what their plight would be if this would be his plight. And so, I had a heart for that. And at the time, I also had some, ecclesiastical and institutional resources. And it was my responsibility to use those to help meet their grief and support them in whatever ways that I could. And so that's what I did. The answers changed over time. Sometimes it was opening up the church building. Sometimes it was making funding available for youth activities. Mostly it was listening and just being present. But I could not be, and as much as I could respond, I couldn't not be present. And and again, that's an experience that changed my life, from going to be with young people in place. And from a theological standpoint, that's, it's Emmanuel, it's the immanence of God. What does it mean to get close, to be intimate, to be proximate to places of pain and grief? And what is yes, you have the opportunity to serve, but frankly, you become transformed as you do. And it totally changed my life.
Wow. Thank you, Starsky, for sharing that. I'm so sorry of what you experienced with your brother's death. And I appreciate you just sharing that, so people understand that we all have our human experiences, our personal experiences as well. And some of the things and how we become advocates is a lot of these are from our personal experience and how they just touch us, and wanting to be able to create a different situation for someone else's sibling, for example. And I see that in you. So praise God for your work. Are you referencing the Freedom Riders? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah.
The Freedom Riders. Yes.
Yeah. I mean, this is so one of the things that happened is, and this again, the beauty of young people. Within Michael Brown was killed on August 9th, 2014. By Labor Day, which is the weekend of August 31st, there were hundreds of young people across the country, about 500 from across the country, who were already organizing and mobilizing to come to Ferguson. And it wasn't, it wasn't that movement voyeurism. They weren't coming to just see, but they had already been in contact with people on the ground, with the Organization for Black Struggle and others. They were trying to hear what people needed. And part of what people on the ground needed was someone to give witness and to tell the story. They needed somebody to amplify what was happening and to invite resources and invite support. And so that's what these young people were trying to do. But they needed a place, right? They weren't highly religious, right? I got an email from a dear sister who was trying to help them find a space. They thought they could be at one of the local universities. The university recognized the political nature of the environment that it would bring upon them. And they pulled back, understandably, but they pulled back. And then an email came to me and the pastor of a large Episcopal church downtown from someone who worked at a museum, because they had contacted the museum, see if they could use that space. And what they needed was a place to be. They needed a home base for the weekend. Place where they could come, they could organize, they could send people forth, they could kind of be a welcome center, they could do workshops and do healing spaces and this kind of thing. But they needed a building. Let me be very clear to all the pastors out there. They were not looking for scripture, prayer. They needed a building. And so I tell people all the time, I tell pastors a lot, sometimes the most valuable thing the church has is real estate.
Amen.
And so they needed a space and they needed a willingness to open up. And they had people already on the road, ready to go. Like they were going to be there in 2 days. So they're like, can we come? Like, what do you need? You need space. What kind of space? All of it. They needed all of it. And so the question was, will we be willing just to open up the space? And we were. And so that's part of what it was. And it put us in relationship with, and this is what space does, right? We hear a lot about, let's say this really quickly. We hear a lot about like the founders of Black Lives Matter, 𝕃𝕀𝕍𝔼 and 𝕍𝐼𝐳 and Patrisse Cullors. Two of them, they had never met in person before they came on the ride, and they met at the church.
What?
Right. So you start talking about it. They had organized, they knew about each other, they had communicated, but it's the power of place. Again, my theology is like, we need spaces and places where we can connect as folk to build the things that transform. So I think we didn't know it at the time. We had no idea that these powerful figures, these souls that God had put on purpose, years before, would actually connect in space at the side of the sanctuary, if we would be open to it, right? And so that's part of what happened. And that, engagement with young people, opening the space to young people who needed a place to organize, helped it to be a cradle for groups like Action St. Louis to form and to be doing powerful political work right now in our community on behalf of Black people. It became a space where people came to connect. And it's just, and I ended up playing other roles, co-chairing the Ferguson Commission, doing other convening work. Again, convening in the public space where we could learn and determine what will be the path forward. And frankly, last thing I'll say, listening to young people and wanting their voices to be heard is how I got to this role. There was a gathering, a national summit of clergy convened by sojourners in Washington, D.C. And someone reached out to me and they asked me about telling the story. Can you come tell us the story of Ferguson? I said, no, I can't come tell you the story of Ferguson. What I will do is I'll sponsor a group of 10 young people to come and tell you the story. So I brought them. They told their story. I moderated the conversation. And through that engagement, and it was at that summit that I met Marian Wright Edelman. And that is critical to the work that I began to do at CDF and how I ended up years later being the president. Listen to young people.
Listening to young people. Look at that. Look at God.
Yeah.
You mentioned the name, Marian Wright Edelman. Listen, founder of the Children's Defense Foundation or Fund, excuse me, birthed out of a research project, the Washington Project research project, where she focused on lobbying Congress for child and family nutrition programs and expanding the Head Start program, which is near and dear to my family because my aunt Patricia Brown is a former national leader or organizer of the Head Start program.
Oh, wow.
Of course, yes. So I learned a little bit about Marion through her. But not only that, I also know her from reading about the Individuals with Disabilities Act of 1975, which is a personal professional act that I write accommodation letters for the children as a child psychiatrist that I see, right, who are disabled. And I also love reading about first, especially when it comes to Black folks. I love reading about first. And I know that she was the first African American woman in this country to admit it to a Mississippi State bar. She was the first African American woman female, or the first female. I couldn't clarify this. To be on the board of directors of Yale University.
Yeah.
And I'm sure there were many firsts that followed her founding of this Children's Defense Fund. But what I also loved, it was her humanity, her love for children. And she has many honorary degrees, many awards, the Presidential Medal of Freedom Award, the nation's highest civilian award. You know, she has the Robert F. Kennedy Lifetime Achievement. I mean, this woman is remarkable.
Yes.
Remarkable. And I understand she's somewhere in the Carolinas right now, I think, living and thriving. I've admired her from afar, but can you tell me about how she is? Can you talk about her attributes that you appreciate about her, having a personal relationship with her?
Yeah, I mean, you've named several of them. She's still here in DC, but she is from Bennettsville. Okay. She's from Bennettsville, South Carolina. And her story is critically begins there as a preacher's kid. Mm-hmm. Who saw her family responding to needs in community by establishing through the church and in community social service supports. And so that was deeply embedded in who she was. She was both wicked smart and a powerful leader. I say wicked smart because she was very present in Mississippi Freedom Summer, very present in the civil rights era. She was the public policy director for Dr. King's Poor People's Campaign. And the story is told even in 𝕃𝕀𝕍𝔼's work on the King years, that it was her idea. And it was her, matter of fact, she made the case to Martin Luther King in a retreat in Virginia in 1967 for the Poor People's Campaign, the mobilization for the Poor People's Campaign. And 𝕃𝕀𝕍𝔼 records that he was in a dejected place. He didn't have clarity of vision about what the next steps of the movement would be. And she talked about a Poor People's Campaign. And 𝕃𝕀𝕍𝔼 says that he received the proposal like an answered prayer.
Wow.
Those, of course, who know his life understand that this becomes the final mobilization, the final campaign that he is engaged in is trying to bring people to Washington, D.C. And so in many ways, she has seen herself, her life's work since the establishment of the Washington Research Project for the last 50 years. So it was 1973. For the last 50 years, has been pursuing the same public policy agenda as the Poor People's Campaign, advancing those same aims and seeking to extend Dr. King's work. She is a remarkable matriarch, a mother of our movement in so many ways, who learned at the feet of Ella Jo Baker and Dorothy Height, and passes on that same spirit to so many, both educating thousands of leaders over the years in servant leadership, commitment to these movements, but also brilliantly developing an institution. What I tell people about Children's Defense Fund is so brilliant is that this is an institution that is bridged from movement to movement. And she has stewarded it from the civil rights movement to its transition during the movement for Black lives. And again, the greatest kind of mobilization for racial justice since the civil rights movement. And she has marked all of that. And I am an institutionalist. I hate to say this, people don't like it, but I believe that true movements need inspired ideas, animated individuals, and strong institutions. But the institutions hold the movement from period to period. And so I think one of the great gifts of Marian Wright Edelman that the book that has not yet been written is the fact that she built out of this aspiration an institution that bridged movements.
Yeah.
And so she's just great. Can't say enough.
Wow. What is your mission for the Children's Defense Fund? Can you talk about your focus of the organization? Yes, please.
Yeah, you articulated our vision statement earlier, that we envision a nation where marginalized children flourish, leaders prioritize their well-being, and communities wield the power to ensure they thrive. This is a vision statement that we discerned with the board upon my entry at CDF. And it really speaks to what I believe the work of the next generation is for CDF. We have done powerful work and we'll continue to do powerful work to convince leaders, policymakers and others to center children in public policy. But I also believe that our most critical work will be developing and sending those leaders forth, shaping those leaders. And through our own pipelines, through our own community organizing, building power so that the communities that are impacted by public policy actually have more say in that public policy. So I think of the same ways I've been transformed by young people. And I say, hey, you know what? This is great. What if we just gave them the keys? It's time to give them the keys. The 74 million children in America are the most diverse generation ever. It's the first time we've had a majority of people under the age of 18 to be Black and brown. What they need and what they want. And there's a growing divide between generations. You look at those who are under 18 and those who are 75 and above, and the gap in diversity is so vast that it's hard to think that through this Senate and this Congress that does not reflect the diversity of these children, we're going to get public policy that actually is in these young people's interest. And so part of our work is training young people to be able to cut issues, helping clergy to understand the theological imperative of working toward child well-being, to help, do my personal kind of work here. CDF has 30 years worth of history in faith-based organizing. Part of my contribution to that, I really want to be the development of theologies of child well-being. It's one thing to say that we should have children. It's another thing for us to interrogate the promise of progeny in the scriptures that say that a lion will lay down with the lamb and a little child shall lead them, right? If we understand that, if we understand things like, guess what? There was only one of the 12 disciples who was of an adult age. They actually were 12, 13, and 14-year-olds. Then we understand Christianity as a children's movement. So we don't have to convince Christians to do work to advocate for children. We just tell them, be a good Christian. They'll understand that this is the way of Jesus, right? So this is what I want to add to the work that Marian has done so powerfully. And I think it all has to do with the formation of leaders and sending them forth to be and become on behalf of the children that we are called to serve.
Amen, Starsky. Amen. What can we do to help push this movement forward?
Yeah.
What do you need from the community?
Yeah, first and foremost, I tell people all the time, as ritual, I invite you to first and foremost conjure the image of the child who makes you smile, right? There's a kid in everybody's life who, when you think about him, you see him doing a thing, you can't help but to smile, right? So first, I invite you, as per ritual, find a regular moment in time, whether that's every week, just to spend 30 seconds thinking about that child, because there's something about the socialization and orientation of children that we lose. And I think we're brought back to the child within when we do that. And I think we're brought more intimately close to children's issues when we do that. So first and foremost, I want you to think of that on a regular ritualistic basis. The second thing I encourage people to do very practically is I encourage people to go to childrensdefense.org, sign up to receive regular emails from Children's Defense Fund. If you do that, and to follow us at Child Defender on Twitter. If you do that, a couple of things you're going to do. Yeah, Child Defender 1973 on Instagram. If you do this, what you're going to get is you're going to get regular updates. You're going to get advocacy prompts. You're going to get regular opportunities to engage in advocacy in your respective communities. So I encourage people to do that. The last thing I encourage people to do is to connect your congregation or your community to something we call a child watch. If you go to childrensdefense.org, we have a whole toolkit on Child Watch. What it is an opportunity for you to go and experience in your local community what's going on with children. And you can choose any area. If you're interested in child health, it'll teach you how to communicate with the local hospital, go see the NICU. If you're interested in juvenile justice, then it'll share with you how you can go to the local family courts and sit in and understand what's really happening with the young people in juvenile courts. If you're interested in child welfare, then it'll share with you how you can go and find out how the process works with local. But I want you to find a thing related to children that interests you and intrigues you and organize a child watch. You can do it with your family. You can do it with your church group. You can do it with your neighborhood, your block unit. Go do a child watch. I don't think you can go pay attention for a while to the realities of children in this country and not do something. So I'm glad to have you here with us, but we're also trying to create a movement, not just build an institution. And if we bring people around children and begin, movements grow by inspiration, right? We think about the early church, right? I want you to catch it. I don't want to catch you. I want you to catch it. And so expose yourself to children, ritually remind yourself of children who make you smile, and then organize people in your community to go see what's happening. And if you connect with us, I'm sure there's something we can connect you to.
Amen. Thank you, Starsky. Thank you for sharing that. And I'll make sure that actually is reshared in promos that I'll be doing this week and beyond this week as well, so that people know. Because I know that with the child tax credit, for example, that many people weren't aware of the programming that were available for their families, correct? In order to, I think that was initiated in order to rid child poverty, if I'm not mistaken. Was that the credit?
Indeed. Yeah, and we're still telling people right now. I know we're coming up on tax time. We want to make sure people file their taxes, file on time. If you have children in your household, even if you didn't receive the expanded child tax credit in that July through December timeframe, you can still file and get benefit for that. If you only received it for that period, there is still tax benefit for you. So we're encouraging people to make sure you file your taxes if you got children in your household, so you get full benefit to that. But this is one that's right now. Also in advocacy right now, we're encouraging people, if you're in contact with, to be in contact with your senators, to implore them to extend the universal free school meals program. This is something that fed lots of children at a lower cost during the pandemic, but it expires in June. And we don't believe, I was talking to a senator on the Hill who's one of our champions. He wondered why everything in public school is free except the food. I said, oh man, that's good. I'm gonna use that again. That'll preach. There's no reason why children, we understand the connection between food and learning, nutrition and learning. And so we need to make this available to all young people. And so we're also encouraging people right now to reach out to their congressional representatives, to their senators, to encourage them to extend the universal free school meals program through the USDA waiver. So these are two critical pieces. The child tax credit, which we're still working toward, and we know can be in America because it is in every other English-speaking industrialized nation, and the universal free school meals are two basic supports that we're encouraging people to talk to their congresspeople about. So thank you for helping to get the word out about these things.
Yes, we must. Thank you for sharing how we can help. What do you want people to remember about you, your legacy?
Wow, someone asked me this once before. They asked me in this way, what kind of ancestor do you want to be?
Wow.
And I think the key for me is I just want to be remembered. I'm not without ego. It's not as bad as it used to be at Xavier, but I'm not without ego. I think the key is those who do things that are worthwhile are remembered. And that doesn't mean you have to be remembered by a lot of people. My legacy most significantly will be the lives of my children and what they do in the world. As an ancestor, I just want to be remembered, which will mean I've had some impact on someone. There's so many of us marginalized, muted voices in community that are forgotten. And so I don't plan to, I'm not trying to be so special that I get remembered for a thing. But I do want to be remembered. And so that's my hope, is that I have enough impact on someone's life that at some point their lineage will call my name.
Wow. Starsky, thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else that you would like to leave the audience with?
The joy of service and connection, the beauty of these kind of platforms, to be able to be again with folks who have been inspiration to you and to others. So gratitude for your work and the opportunity to tell my story. Right. So this whole platform, people telling their stories are healing. And so in as much as we've experienced this isolation, I'm grateful for the opportunity to share my story, put some of those pieces, put some of those pieces back together. And grateful for you and encouraging others to follow you and giving people an opportunity to just tell their story. We need it, especially right now.
Amen. Amen. Starsky, thank you so much for joining me, friend. I really appreciate it. I know it's been years since we had the opportunity of catching up. And what better way to do it in sharing your story and talking about your current role. And I really do appreciate that, the connection. I really do, because we want our children to understand their purpose.
Yeah.
That what they go through, it has purpose, and it follows them throughout their journey, and to embrace the journey as much as they can, to find the people that are loving and supportive of their purpose, to explore avenues that they didn't think they would explore or be interested in. It's all a part of their, their evolution of becoming who they are. And you are a wonderful true story of that. So thank you. Thank you so much again for sharing your time and in your personal space, a little bit of your personal space. But indeed, it's been a wonderful, I would say, blessing to hear your story. Thank you.
Thanks, sis. I appreciate you.
Yes, yes, yes. And I'm actually going to put up here where people can actually, again, find you, and as well as donate and become part of the subscribers so that you are aware. We also shared, Dr. Starsky said, we want to make sure we talk to our congressmen about the extension of the universal free food program, because that's critical. So you all make sure you share this, share this, share this. And please just share this, okay? Share this. I mean, we want you to share, this live, but people may not get to the end and see this. So we need you to share everything that you've learned here. So that's why I'm keeping it up, because it's very critical for our children. It's very critical for them, because you're right. It is a part of nutrition. Is everything.
That's right.
It's everything. I did an interview this week about how it affects our mood, how it affects our mental health. How it affects chronicity of these diseases and diabetes, high blood pressure, the genes that are predisposed us and predestined for us to have. Nutrition is one of the things that we can fight against these progressions of chronic diseases, So it's important. It is important. So thank you for sharing that, friend. I appreciate you. And thank your family, please, because I know it's Sunday evening and I know it's probably family time in your home. So time away your family, I know it's precious and priceless. And so I appreciate that. So please love on them for us. All right.
No, we'll do. My wife was excited about me doing this. She was the first person to share this out. So I was like, she posted it on Twitter. I said, where you get that flyer from? I need to share that. So they're happy that I'm doing it. Glad that I'm connecting with you.
That's my girl. Please kiss her for me. Love on her. Love on your children. I appreciate that. Take care, okay? We'll be praying with you and for you and what you're doing in your role as the CEO and president of the Children's Defense Fund. Thank you so much for what you do. All right. Thank you. And you all, thank you. Thank you so much. I appreciate the people who've actually been on the live until the very end. So I appreciate that. Thank you to Neil, Yolanda, Dr. Janine, I see you. And there's some others that their names didn't populate, but I appreciate you. Michael Robinson, I see you. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. Hey, listen, you all, please share, please share. And again, I specifically asked to share about extension of the educational or the school free food program to your senators, your congressional men, and as well as go to the Children's Defense Fund. Make sure you go to their website and become subscribers so you know how to get involved in your community. All right. Thanks again, you all. And listen, I look forward to another Live with Dr. Dawn segment with you. Stay tuned and have a wonderful evening.